The Successful Encore Career podcast is brought to you by Central Ohio Area Agency on Aging and Nationwide Insurance.
This is Carol Ventresca, Executive Director at Employment for Seniors.
Hi, and I'm Deb Shinoskie. I am the Project Director at AARP Foundation CSEP, and we're here to talk about interviewing, and I've been in the workforce development business for over 30 years, most recently at Goodwill Columbus and AARP, and I'm hoping to give you a few tips on how to be successful when it comes to interviewing.
Deb, thanks so much for joining us today. This is going to be a great episode of the Successful Encore Career. We are going to talk about that interviewing and the issues that our mature job seekers have. So let's get everybody ready for their next interview. We've got lots of information to cover. We've got a series of questions. Deb's going to give us great information. So let me just get started on the first one. Okay. Interviewing can be a very difficult step for mature job seekers, but it's really the most important step that a job seeker can make. They really just have one chance to make a good first impression. So, Deb, what are the basic steps that you would suggest a mature job seeker take to prepare for an interview before that crucial day?
I would absolutely start by de-stressing before the interview, using relaxation techniques such as exercise, deep breathing, visualization, or whatever works for you, excluding alcohol, of course. Also, be sure your application materials, for example, your resume and your cover letter, are perfect, that your references have been pulled together and vetted, and that you've done your research on the company. Ensure that you have professional interviewing clothing, a dress or a suit in which you're comfortable. You should dress one step above what your supervisor on that job would wear. Also, make a dry run past the location of the interview a day or two in advance so that you will know how long it takes to get there. Always arrive to the interview approximately 10 minutes early. Practice your answers to commonly asked interview questions out loud. Mock interviews or informational interviews are a great preparatory tool, but reading and memorizing your answers is not good enough. Believe me, it's another ball game to have to answer out loud to another person in a high-stress environment.
Those are wonderful, great first steps, Deb, and it's so important to really be prepared to go into that interview session prepared to do the best you can and make a good first impression. So now the next area that we really want to cover is to talk about skills. Mature job seekers really have difficulty giving an employer a clear picture of their skills, what they've done in previous positions. They don't know how to update their skills and how they can show that they provided value to those employers. In two previous podcasts, we talked about transferable skills. So could you give us some information today on your insights on the importance of identifying transferable skills for an interview, or any suggestions you may have for job seekers on how to best utilize transferable skills in an interviewing situation?
Carol, employers want to know the skills you possess in today's workforce, not what you did 20 years ago. So talk only about your accomplishments that relate to that particular job. And as you mentioned, transferable skills can provide the information needed to demonstrate how a candidate can fulfill the requirements of a job. Employers today want to know that you're a good fit for the position, so job seekers need to be prepared to answer the question, how will hiring you add success to our organization? So to do that, you want to compare your transferable skills to the position description and compile a series of quantifiable examples of how you can successfully complete the tasks of the job, showing the value you'll bring to the employer.
I love that question that you told clients and mature job seekers to ask. How will hiring you add to the success of an organization? That's critical. So now the next step is, we've already talked about transferable skills, but we all possess other skills and other accomplishments. So what are the other kinds of things that we should also emphasize when we're in an interview?
Soft skills are a great thing to talk about. And it's really important that if you can squeeze it into the conversation in any way, you want to talk about your job stability. How many years have you spent on a job? We don't want to hire job hoppers still today. Talk about your good attendance record. Talk about if you're using heavy equipment, any of those kinds of things. Talk about your safety record. Additionally, other things that you could mention are great communication skills, data analysis experience. Follow through is huge for us on anything that has to do with any type of customer service. And lastly, it's always wise to point out your ability and willingness to learn new things, take on leadership roles so that you're going to progress down this path if they put you on their payroll, and that you are absolutely willing and able to work as a member of a team.
Wonderful. Those are great examples. And mature job seekers, it's important to really have a good understanding of your transferable skills as well as your soft skills. So now you've got all that information, everything's clear in your head. It's still nerve-wracking. An interview can be really hard to get through. You're nervous, you don't know what to do, and all of a sudden you have very strange mannerisms. So let's talk about things to not do and what will really hurt you in an interview.
Okay. It is critical that you make positive and consistent eye contact as you respond to questions. I see people all the time whose eyes are rolling all over, up and down and up and to the right. And when we see that as an interviewer, it makes us very nervous. We don't even have to think about it. It becomes a red flag. If you roll your eyes up and to the right, you're making up stuff. And so all of a sudden, we feel like, what just happened here? So it's really, really important that you practice making good eye contact. You don't want to stare them down like a psychotic. You want to kind of focus on their eyes, look around their shoulder area as you answer. But eye contact is critical, and the only way to get good at it is to practice in a mirror. Put your grandchildren down in front of you and tell them, look, you don't even have to listen to what I'm saying. Here's a list of questions I want you to ask me, and if you ever see me look anywhere but other than at you, I want you to tap me on the leg, and you can stay up 10 extra minutes. I'll give you a quarter every time you catch me. A child will be having their hand halfway in the air, excited about catching you, and if you can make it through that, you're going to make it through any interview. It is critical that you make eye contact, and once you are done with your answer, you kind of give them a little nod of the head, like, how did you like those apples? And then you break that serious eye contact and look then down at their chest level to give them a chance to think about, wow, what did I just hear here? That's one of my big hot button items. Also, you need to be focused, and if you don't understand a question or need a minute to think, it's always wise to repeat the question for clarity and or ask for clarification on what they're trying to get at from your interviewer. You need to learn the current language and terminology for the field. Industry jargon changes daily, and it may have changed dramatically since the last time that you interviewed for a job. Another biggie for me, practice walking into a room and sitting down. When sitting, your body should be at a right angle from the interviewer and not facing him directly. Relax, lean forward slightly, drop your front shoulder. This body posture will show that you're interested in what the interviewer has to say. The more you practice your eye contact and the body language, the more confident, positive, and optimistic you'll appear in that interview. Also, you need to maintain your poise and self-control. If you disagree with a question or a comment, try to bring the conversation right back to your skill set and your abilities for that job. Never let them see you become flustered or angry. And be sure to answer questions completely and honestly. I make notes on a pad in my lap as they're asking questions so that I can be sure that I can glance down and cover everything that they've asked and I can stay on target. You never want to stray from the questions that are asked or ramble.
Deb, I have told a lot of clients to do mock interviews, but suggesting a grandchild has never been an idea. I like that. That's going to come back into for our clients too. So thank you for that idea. So now we all make other common mistakes in interviews. Can you give us some other examples of things that we really need to watch?
Absolutely. Arriving late for an interview is a huge problem. That sets the stage for everything that we can expect as an employer moving forward. If you can't get to this big interview date on time, I know that we've got nowhere to go but down from here. This is like the courtship of dating, only the courtship of interviewing. And if you can't make that commitment and get there, then I know if I hire you and you get relaxed, we've got nowhere to go but down from here. So get there on time. Make sure that you get there about 10 minutes early. Be sure that you're neatly and appropriately dressed for the interview. Other big mistakes that folks make: poor personal appearance. Your dress, your hair, your nails, and a big pet peeve of mine, and I've heard from a lot of other HR resources, is shoes that are not in good shape. You come in with scuffed up shoes with the polish is worn off your heel and stuff. We notice everything. Again, this is the courtship of our relationship. And so I expect this to be the best that you can be. And if you can hardly get that together, and again, if I hire you and put you on my team, I know when you get relaxed, it's going to get worse. And if this isn't even up to par and you get worse, that's certainly not good enough for me. Never apologize for your age as a mature job seeker or act as if your skills are inferior. Stress your ability to work with people of all ages and cultures. Never say anything negative about former employees or coworkers. We know if you're going to do it and say it about them, if you end up not working for us, you're going to do the same thing, and our reputation is paramount. Do not stress your need for a job. In other words, don't be a job beggar. Additionally, don't say that you can or will do anything as it sounds as if you're begging. You need to be laser focused on the type of work that you want and what you'll bring to the table that is of value for that particular position. Do not discuss past experiences that have no connection to the job for which you're interviewing. Happens all the time. And don't prolong an interview with ideas, issues, or comments that are not applicable to that particular job. Another big, big mistake made by everyone, not just mature job seekers. Do not ever bring up compensation or salary during an interview. And if the interviewer asks you for your salary requirements during an interview process, try to sidestep the discussion by saying things such as, well, I'd expect a salary that's commensurate with the duties and responsibilities of the position, and then sit back and wait. That may be plenty enough for them to know that you know this is not the appropriate time to talk about salary if there's not an offer on the table. Another thing that you could throw out there is, what do you typically offer a candidate with my experience level and education level? It's not ever appropriate to talk salary until there's an offer on the table. If you've tried to hedge the question and you feel pressed to give a response anyways, you must always give a range. Make sure that you've done your research to know what the going range is in that geographic area for that type of work. Then state something like mid-30s to mid-40s, depending upon the level of duties and responsibilities for the position. I hear every day people who have not done their research, people couch what they want between two numbers. So, for instance, if they want $40,000 a year and they know they need to give a range because they've learned that, when I ask them, what do you want to make, what's the range, how much do you need for this job, they will say, if they want 40, not doing their studies, they'll say 35 to 45 because they never want to be too high, they never want to be too low. And I just need you to understand the flaw in your thinking if you're one of the millions who do this across the country. You wanted 40, you told me between 35 and 45, and I heard 35 because I always listen to the bottom number because that tells me what's good enough to get you on my payroll. And then I'm always going to offer a little less than that because I like a deal. So if you tell me 35 to 45, I'm probably going to come in at 34 to see if I can get you at a bargain rate of 34. But how different is that from the 40 that you wanted? So if you're going to give a range and you want and need $40,000, that better be the bottom number in your range, because I hear and I respond to whatever the bottom number of your range is. So don't make the mistake of couching what you want between two numbers, not wanting to be too high or too low, because I heard your lowest number.
Deb, I think that the salary information is probably the hardest thing for people to understand and wrestle with because it's so personal. And so this is great advice. Thank you so much for giving that much detail to it. The other part, too, is for clients to remember we're discussing interviewing, but going to a job fair is also a series of mini interviews. So going dressed appropriately and having good information, doing your research, understanding salary issues are just as important in the job fair situation as it is in the one-to-one interview situation. So that's wonderful. So just one more thing. We've talked about some of the things we shouldn't do. Let's think about the things that we definitely want to make sure we have done, and how do we do follow-up after interviews?
Okay. You want to always arrive prepared and have extra copies of your materials with you at an interview, such as your resume, your reference list, your transcripts, any other thing. Just because you sent them doesn't mean that the employer came prepared. They might have been at a meeting and run in at the last minute to do an interview, and they may actually look right at you in the face and say, do you have a spare copy of your resume? I don't seem to have one with me. So big fatal flaw if you don't come prepared to make life easy for that interviewer. So make sure that you always have a few copies. You also may think that you're going to meet with one person and you end up meeting with a panel of people, and one has your resume and the others don't. So go prepared 100% of the time. Be sure that you've completed all of the application materials the employer requested, and that you've taken all the tests required, such as any assessment, that you've done any physical exams, background and drug screens that they required before you go. Always, 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 underline, always ask questions. So you want to have a few canned questions with you just in case at the end of the interview, the interviewer's pretty much really covered what you wanted to know. You need to have a few written down in your portfolio, because when they say, is there anything you'd like to ask me? Big fatal flaw. You never want to say, no, I think you about covered everything. We need to know that you were interested, that you were listening, that things that we commented on drew questions in your head. So have a few canned ones in case you didn't come up with any as you were listening. But some canned ones could be, what are the top priorities for this position in the first 3 months? Another one, what are some of the most important challenges you would like the person you hire to address? Another one, how will job performance be measured? And for sure, if it has not been said, you always want to ask the interviewer, when will you be making your final decision? This is critical information for you to know. This allows you to know when to follow up. Everything hinges on that. So if they have not said, well, we'll be in contact by next Friday, you want to say, when will you be making your final decision, and make a note of it. Also, you need to be sure to send an appropriate thank you note or thank you letter within 24 hours. I recommend to my customers, it's smart to send an email with an actual letter, a full thank you letter attachment to that email on the same day that you had that interview. That allows the person to know, wow, they're on their game, they're really appreciative. And then I print out that letter on 24-pound bond paper, not Xerox paper. Use the quality paper. I print it out, I sign it, I put it in the mail, because then within 1 or 2 days, they get the hard copy of the letter. And so that allows that interviewer twice to think of you in a positive way, not just once. You send them an email and they go, oh yeah, I loved Carol when she came in. And then a day or two later, they get that hard copy on professional 24-pound bond paper, and then it makes them think of you one more time as they're trying to make that very important decision. Lastly, if you haven't heard back after your interview, you must follow up with the employer, and I suggest one day after he or she said they were going to be making their final decision. So in that interview, if they say, we're going to make our decision by Friday the 24th, you haven't heard from them, Monday morning the 27th, you need to pick up the phone to call and ascertain if they've made a decision or to suggest that you set up a second interview because you want that job.
Wonderful. Thank you, Deb. This is great information. Clients, make sure you've listened to all of these bits and pieces. These are important steps on being successful in interviewing as a mature job seeker. So thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Carol, for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Successful Encore Career Podcast, presented by Employment for Seniors. This podcast is available on our website, employseniors.org, as well as iTunes or your preferred podcast player. If you like what you've heard, consider donating to Employment for Seniors to help us defray the cost of producing the podcast. Go to employseniors.org and click on the Donate Now button. Any amount is appreciated, and we'll make sure we thank you for your support in an upcoming podcast episode. Employment for Seniors is the premier resource linking mature adults with employment opportunities. If you're 50 years of age or older, living in Central Ohio, we're here to help you find employment. If you're a Central Ohio employer, our mature, talented, skilled, and dependable job seekers will provide significant value to your organization. Follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. If you have a topic or interview idea, let us know. Send us an email at podcast@employseniors.org.
Circle 270 Media Podcast Network.